Hang Zone Investigation. Mystery. Peril. Deceit. Encroachment. Money. The Hang Zone investigates.
That's right, thank you. So this week, our investigation will deal with North Korea, and was out for a few days, and ended up sifting through a documentary that my wife had recorded, whatever channel, Investigative Discovery, something, but it was a National Geographic documentary called Inside North Korea's Dynasty. When I went online so I could get some audio and download it, I learned there's also a newer National Geographic joint called Inside North Korea or something. And that's a 5-parter. I watched a 4-parter. So I'm sure they're both probably pretty similar, but you know, we don't know a lot about North Korea. I personally at least, I remember we watched a Vice documentary a couple years ago about how Kim Jong-un, the current leader of North Korea, had Dennis Rodman visit them to watch a basketball game together, and it was really just insane just to watch the, no one... They only clap if the Supreme Leader claps. They just kind of sit there silently watching the game. No one leaves their seat. It's, it's really weird. He's a dictator, a communist dictator. I think it might be the only, you're poli-sci guy, the only communist dictatorship in the world.
I believe that's correct.
So it all started, and I'm going to paraphrase this part of it, but there's been 3 communist dictators in North Korea's history. So Korea apparently was split up after World War II, and it's where, we're dividing, Germany. We're dividing different territories for the victors, and apparently Russia got its hands on, they got to, dictate the course of the future for North Korea, and we got to help instill the government in South Korea. So South Korea has a democratic, government, and they had a communist government, and they installed the original Kim Il-sung. He's the grandfather of Kim Jong-un. So Kim Il-sung, now they hate South Korea. That's something you need to know, too. That's their bitter rival. Because they used to be together. And obviously there was some kind of a war that I'm not real familiar with, but we were involved in, and Russia was involved in, but it was never called a war. And I know this because I watched MASH when I was a little kid, and they always said it was just a police conflict, something like that. Yeah, they never called it a war. But we were, helping out South Korea. Russia was helping out North Korea. And this is what it ended up as. And it's a very closed-off nation as well. They don't allow anything from the outside to get in. And Kim Il-sung, the original Kim, who started, as dictator over North Korea back in, 1948. One of his big bits was kept trying to assassinate that pesky, whoever was president of South Korea at the time, he would try to assassinate him. Also, just try to show your teeth a little bit, and this was all show for his people, to keep them under his thumb. He would instigate the U.S. now and again. They once captured a ship, a U.S. spy ship, and tortured the U.S. Soldiers until they would go in a press conference saying that everything was great here, and they're sorry. They should never have done this, and that was all for his people to see, to say, wow, look at that. They captured a ship from the great United States, the country that nearly wiped Japan off the map, yet they're not doing it to us. What great respect they have. We are a world superpower with them.
Right.
Deceit.
That is
Not to
deceit.
fast forward too far, but that's why I guess they were intimating when Kim Jong-un a few years ago met with publicly Trump and shook his hand, and they were on a stage together with 12 flags, and 6 of them are North Korea, 6 of them are the United States. Just to have that press conference, just to have him sitting with the United States president, it's never happened before, was thought of as he has now done more. He has shown his people that he is stronger than his dad or his grandfather because he's equal footing with the greatest superpower ever. It's them and then it's us. Like, that's how you can keep the people just crying on your birthday, or if you stub your toe. Like, they really love the supreme leader.
Yeah, and just
They
a
treat him like a god.
brief interjection. That's what I was going to say, is that we talk a lot, at least these days, about rewriting history or whitewashing, and boy, we're not telling the whole truth. That's nothing compared to that. I mean, they literally think the average person there, it's the way I understand it from some reporting, they have literally no idea what the last 100 years have actually been like.
Yeah,
Like, they believe that they defeated Japan on their own. Never
But if you
mind
read-
what Russia and the U.S.
you read
is
stuff
involved
about
in the war.
societies, what, in the 1200s or something, and you're able to make your people believe that you're a king because God
Right.
touched your family, and that's why, and they all do believe that. They still believe that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I found a couple of interesting things I need to bring to you in this edition of the Hang Zone Investigates North Korea. And it all stems from this Inside North Korea's Dynasty I found. It was put out by the National Geographic Channel. So the grandfather, the first Kim Il-sung, tried to one time assassinate the president of South Korea as he gave a speech. So he's giving a speech, and there's others up on stage with him, but he's at the podium or whatever. Well, the gunman missed and ended up hitting and killing the president's wife.
Ooh.
Yuk Young Soo. This was in 1974. Medical personnel rushed in to take her to the hospital. And then the president of South Korea finished his speech.
Priorities, bro.
Dudes being dudes right there. Look.
Did him a favor.
I can't fix her. Right? That's Doc's job.
I'm not a doctor.
I found that
That's awesome.
incredible.
That's if Dan McDowell were president of South Korea.
Yeah, scene control of the highest order.
Look, I mean, I got a job to do. I can't fix her.
What am I going to do if I go with her to the hospital? I'm going to sit in the waiting room.
Now, his son eventually became dictator Kim Jong-il.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard of him. That's Kim Jong-un's father.
A key character in Team America World Police.
Had a great song in there, too.
Kim Jong-il
Ronry.
was not, though, the guy who they expected he would succeed his father. There were a lot of other better candidates. But Kim Jong-il was a big fan of movies. And he hated South Korea's film industry. Let's see. He thought, in contrast to other films being released globally, South Korea's were stiff and lifeless. But he had a plan. His plan was to target, he looked to South Korea, and they called them like the Brad and Angelina of their day. There was a very famous director and his wife, who was a very famous South Korean actress. So he kidnapped them and forced them to make movies for North Korea.
Whoa.
In fact, they ended up making 7 films in 8 years. And the last film did win some international awards. They ended up escaping because they got the Supreme Leader, Kim Jong-il, to eventually kind of believe that they're just really on board with all of this. But they were held captive for 8 years making films for North Korea.
Damn.
What stands out to me is they escaped in the year 1986. This isn't the 50s.
Yeah.
This isn't the 60s. This isn't something that your grandparents were. This was something that teenage me could have seen on the news. Like, oh, that kidnapped filmmaker just escaped North Korea.
Wow. Man, that's got to be tough, too. A creative endeavor. Like, you got to put your heart into it. Like, if you and I got kidnapped right now, and they're like, do the show. And we're like, man,
well, it's the
know.
one thing you like doing.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but it's like,
but what if you had to do the show about Kim Jong-il?
Right. And they're like, make it sound like
no,
it did.
Hearn kidnapped us, and we could only talk Hearn sports.
Right. And there's a gun trained on you the whole time you're in a show meeting. Yeah, I'm looking at the filmography right here. They were pumping them out.
So he thought, if I can get this country on the map globally through film, my dad will like that. You know, he was the minister of propaganda, and it worked. It worked. And then once he became the dictator, here's a little audio for you. Oh, I hope it's up. Let me make sure my audio's up. On the ticket.
One of his first moves was to put his embassies to work, to bring him his favorite feature films.
He loved movies.
Kim Jong-il got all the latest movies illegally copied by diplomats in North Korean embassies around the world. He would have them sent back to him in Pyongyang. He built up an enormous library of movies, and he watched all of them. He's a big fan of James Bond, apparently. And he's exposed himself to all these movies. They'll be feeding his imagination.
And he would, somehow, they were alleging that he saw himself as a Bond villain.
That kicks ass.
And he would do Bond villainy type things.
That's awesome.
He also built statues of himself and his father all across the nation. The best one was, he made one. The only specification was it must be higher than the Washington Monument, and it was.
Yeah, I've seen that one in Pyongyang. They're huge.
And then, my last thing. There's a million things in this, but I just wanted to bring up a couple of real interesting notes. The one that the president finished his speech after his wife was assassinated. The one that he kidnapped, the best filmmakers in South Korea. It was really a slap in the face to them when the Olympics were awarded to South Korea in 1988. So, the Olympics it's announced they were awarded to South Korea. And he's trying to, convince his people this is the best nation in the world. Why would South Korea, though, get the Olympics? So he did this.
Rocked by this announcement, Kim made a wild demand. He announced that North Korea would co-host the Games. And before he got an answer from the Olympic Committee, he started building stadiums.
The vast propaganda machine here is still demanding that the North be allowed to co-host the Olympics with the South. It's a monumental effort. New sports complexes are growing like mushrooms all over Pyongyang. This glittering masterpiece is known as the Chrysanthemum Stadium because of its shape. His nation's entire resources, money, steel, concrete, are being channeled into this. With 150,000 seats, the communists claim it will be the world's biggest, easily surpassing Seoul's Olympic Stadium.
Kim's gamble was build it and they will come. The Olympic Committee did politely pay a visit to discuss sharing the Games, but ultimately they decided against it.
So he built the biggest stadium in the world.
That's amazing.
Over 150,000 seats. They ended up not getting the Olympics, and I think the following year they ended up they created their own like youth-type Olympic Games where all the communist nations that still were, the Soviet Union was there, whatever other
Cuba.
communist nations participated in these games, and they made a big Olympic-type opening ceremony and all that kind of stuff, but...
Oh, that's awesome.
But they just heard that South Korea was getting the Olympics, so announced, we'll co-host it.
Your friend you don't invite who then shows up. He's like, I got a keg already. What's like, oh, man.
So,
I didn't mean to call it. That's awesome.
So a few fun facts.
What a great move.
From a documentary I watched, a 4-parter National Geographic called Inside North Korea's Dynasty. And there's some mystery and whatnot in the Hang Zone Investigates.
Mystery.
YouTube.com/@SportsGreek